Hey there, book lovers. Welcome to the second episode of Jack and Jill Summarize. We have a treat for you today.
Today, we are delving into the chilling and enigmatic atmosphere of a timeless classic, The Turn of the Screw by Henry James.
That's right. Get ready for a spine-tingling summary. So, turn down the lights, light a candle, and prepare for a journey into the realm of the supernatural.
This tale is the account of a governess's eerie experiences at a remote estate called Bly, nestled in the serene countryside of Essex, England, presumably during the late 1800s.
Our tale begins with a young, inexperienced governess who is hired by a wealthy, handsome bachelor to care for his orphan niece and nephew at his country estate named Bly. The employer has an unusual request. The governess must take full responsibility for the children and never contact him. Because she was in need of employment, the governess accepts the position.
Arriving at Bly, she is immediately struck by its beauty and magnificence. Bly Manor is a grand two-story mansion with elegant architecture. The house has two towers that rise above the surrounding landscape, their stone surfaces aged by time. The grounds stretch out in all directions, with well-manicured lawns, ancient trees, and a meandering pathway leading to a serene lake. The lake's surface mirrors the sky, reflecting the changing seasons and the secrets hidden beneath its tranquil waters. She meets Mrs. Groves, the housekeeper, who warmly welcomes her and provides information about the children. The niece, Flora, is a charming little girl who quickly wins the governess's affection. Her brother, Miles, is away at school but is soon to return.
Shortly after settling in, the governess receives a disturbing letter from Miles's school. The headmaster expels the boy, claiming he is an injury to the others. Shocked and puzzled, the governess couldn't understand why this was happening. She had heard many good things about Miles, which made the situation puzzling. When Miles arrives, she finds him charming and well-behaved, deepening her confusion about the school's decision. As the governess becomes more involved in the children's lives, she begins to sense an unsettling presence at Bly. One evening, while taking a walk, she sees a man standing atop a tower. His appearance is unusual as he has red hair, a pale face, and intense eyes. The figure vanishes as suddenly as it appeared, leaving the governess anxious and unsettled.
Discussing the incident with Mrs. Groves, the governess learns of Peter Quint, the former valet. Quint had an inappropriate influence over Miles and a scandalous relationship with Miss Jessel, the previous governess. Both Quint and Miss Jessel are now dead. Mrs. Groves's description of Quint matches the man the governess saw. Both Quint and Jessel had died in mysterious ways. Miss Jessel drowned herself in the lake on the grounds, and Quint's death was said to have been an accidental fall. He was found dead on the grounds of Bly, having slipped on an icy path and struck his head. Determined to protect the children, the governess remains vigilant. Her suspicions grow when she sees a woman in black by the lake, Miss Jessel's ghost. The little girl, Flora, playing nearby, seems unaware of the ghostly presence. The governess's anxiety mounts as she realizes the children might be in contact with the supernatural. Miles and Flora continue to behave perfectly, but their innocence appears increasingly suspect. The governess struggles with her fear, questioning her own sanity. She decides to confront the situation head-on, seeking to protect the children from the dark forces at Bly.
The governess's resolve to protect the children, Miles and Flora, from the supernatural deepens, but so does her sense of isolation and dread. She keeps her fears from the children and Mrs. Groves, hoping to maintain an impression of normalcy. Yet, the weird occurrences persist, and she becomes increasingly certain that the ghosts of Peter Quint and Miss Jessel are targeting the children. One evening, while reading in the parlor, the governess is startled by the appearance of Quint's ghost outside the window. His gaze is intense and malevolent, but he disappears before she can react. Frightened but determined, she rushes to check on Miles, finding him awake and standing by the window, staring out into the darkness. When she asks Miles about it, he avoids giving a direct answer, which makes her think he might be connected to the strange occurrences. The next day, during a walk with Flora by the lake, the governess sees Miss Jessel's ghost again. This time, Flora's behavior is odd. She seems to be talking to someone invisible. When the governess confronts her, Flora denies seeing anyone, but her unsettling calmness suggests otherwise. The governess begins to doubt her ability to protect the children and considers leaving Bly, but her sense of duty prevents her from doing so.
As days pass, the governess becomes increasingly obsessed with the idea that the children are deceiving her. Miles's charm now feels like a facade hiding dark secrets, and Flora's sweetness appears calculated. She confronts Mrs. Groves with her suspicions, sharing her encounters with the ghosts and her belief that the children are in league with the spirits. Mrs. Groves is sympathetic but skeptical, unable to see the apparitions herself. In a desperate attempt to confirm her fears, the governess interrogates Miles about his expulsion from school. He finally admits that he wanted to be sent home, though his reasons remain vague. His confession only strengthens the governess's belief that Quint has influenced him.
One stormy night, the governess hears footsteps outside her room. Bracing herself, she follows the sound to the staircase, where she sees Miles standing at the top, staring down at her with a strange expression. Before she can speak, the ghost of Peter Quint materializes behind him. The governess cries out, but the apparition vanishes, leaving Miles seemingly unaware of the encounter. Terrified and confused, the governess decides that drastic action is needed. She plans to confront the ghosts directly and save the children from their influence. The following day, she takes Flora to the lake again, hoping to provoke Miss Jessel's ghost into appearing. As expected, the ghost emerges, and the governess demands that Flora acknowledge her presence. Flora, however, reacts with terror and anger, denying the sight and accusing the governess of cruelty. Mrs. Groves arrives, alarmed by Flora's distress. The governess insists that Flora is lying and that she has seen Miss Jessel, but Mrs. Groves is more concerned with the child's immediate well-being. They take Flora back to the house, where she falls ill, her condition attributed to the governess's supposed hallucinations. Mrs. Groves decides to take Flora away from Bly, hoping to restore her health.
With Flora taken away by Mrs. Groves, the governess is left alone at Bly with Miles. Her resolve is stronger than ever, believing that only she can protect Miles from the evil influence of Peter Quint's ghost. She remains determined to confront whatever haunts the estate. The governess decides to keep a close watch over Miles, observing him carefully for any signs of supernatural influence. The boy's behavior, however, continues to be uncertain. At times, he is affectionate and endearing, but there are moments when his demeanor turns unsettling, almost mocking. This duality fuels the governess's conviction that Quint's spirit is somehow controlling him. One afternoon, while sitting with Miles in the drawing room, the governess senses a shift in the atmosphere. The room grows colder, and she feels a presence nearby. Turning, she sees Quint's ghost glaring at her from across the room. Summoning all her courage, she demands that the ghost leave Miles alone. To her horror, the apparition smirks and vanishes, leaving Miles staring blankly, as if in a trance.
In the following days, the governess becomes increasingly paranoid. Every creak of the old house, every flicker of candlelight, seems to signal the presence of the ghosts. She barely sleeps, constantly on edge, fearing another encounter with Quint or Miss Jessel. Her mental state deteriorates as she grapples with the supernatural and her responsibility towards Miles. Miles, sensing her growing distress, becomes more elusive. He avoids direct answers to her questions, and his innocent facade begins to slip. One evening, during a tense dinner, he suddenly asks the governess if she wants to know what happened at school. The question hangs in the air, laden with unspoken implications. Before she can respond, he changes the subject, leaving her frustrated and more determined to uncover the truth.
The governess decides to confront Miles directly. She takes him to the garden, a place where she feels they might be free from the ghost's influence. Sitting him down, she demands to know what he has been hiding. Miles finally confesses that he spoke of things to the other boys that were considered inappropriate. He admits that he wanted to be sent away from Bly. As Miles speaks, the governess feels a chill in the air. She senses Quint's presence nearby, watching and waiting. Desperate to break the hold the ghost has over the boy, she demands that Miles renounce Quint and his influence. Miles, frightened and confused, hesitates. At that moment, Quint's ghost appears once more, a malevolent figure looming over them.
The governess tries to shield Miles from the ghost's gaze. She urges the boy to be strong, to resist the evil presence. As she clings to him, she feels a momentary triumph when Quint's ghost seems to waver. But the victory is short-lived. Miles suddenly goes limp in her arms, his eyes wide with terror. The governess realizes what just happened. Her heart sank. The very child whom she tried so desperately to protect was no more. Miles had died in her arms. The full weight of the tragedy crashes down on her as she holds the lifeless boy, her mind reeling from the horror of the situation. In that moment, she understands the true extent of the malevolent forces at Bly and the terrible cost of her battle against them. As the story draws to a close, the governess is left alone with her grief and guilt. The once beautiful estate of Bly now seems a place of darkness and despair, haunted by the ghosts of the past and the memories of those lost to its malevolent influence.
In the final pages of this book, we are left to ponder the governess's tale. Was it a true account of supernatural terror, or the tragic unraveling of a woman's mind under the strain of isolation and fear? The ambiguity of the story lingers, leaving the listener with a haunting sense of unease and the chilling possibility that some ghosts are born from the depths of the human psyche.
The Turn of the Screw explores several intriguing themes, but leaves readers with an open-ended conclusion. There are several questions left unanswered. Were Miles's misdeeds just childish pranks? Was Flora just an innocent child? Were the ghosts real or mere manifestations of the governess's unraveling mind? Did the children actually know something more? Did the governess unknowingly cause the death of Miles? There are no answers to this, but we believe that the concept of the book is to highlight the innocence and the vulnerability of children and emphasizes the psychological impact of fear. And the second was to show the power of the mind to make us believe what we want to. The young and inexperienced governess shoulders immense responsibility without seeking help. Her isolation, compounded by her employer's absence, leads to destructive heroism, wherein the intentions may have been good but the action and the outcome were the opposite.
That just leaves me at a loss for words.
Absolutely. James's masterful use of ambiguity and the psychological tension between characters make this book a gripping read. If you love mysterious and haunting tales that keep you on the edge of your seat, this book is a must-read. Even if you're not usually into ghost stories, the themes in The Turn of the Screw are timeless and provoke deep thought. It challenges you to question reality, sanity, and the nature of evil. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for more exciting summaries and literary adventures. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Happy reading!